Detroit city government is a service institution that recognizes its subordination to the people of Detroit. The city shall provide for the public peace, health, and safety of persons and property within its jurisdictional limits. The people have a right to expect aggressive action by the city's officers in seeking to advance, conserve, maintain, and protect the integrity of the human, physical, and natural resources of the city from encroachment and or dismantlement. The people have a right to expect city government to provide for its residents decent housing, job opportunities, reliable, convenient, and comfortable transportation, recreational facilities and activities, cultural enrichment, including libraries, art and historical museums, clean air and waterways, safe drinking water, and a sanitary, environmentally sound city. Keep it locked. The Black Detroit Democracy Podcast starts right after these messages.
Detroit 1 Million is a journalism project started by Sam Robinson that centers a generation of Michiganders growing up in a state without a city with 1 million people. Support the only independent reporter covering the 2025 Detroit mayoral race through the lens of young people. Good journalism costs. Visit Detroit1million.com to support Black independent reporting. Have you ever dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Authentically Detroit Podcast Network is here to make those dreams come true. Formerly known as the Deep Network and located inside the Stoudemire, the Authentically Detroit Podcast Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your idea off of the ground. Just visit authenticallydet.com and send a request through the contact page.
Wake up, Detroit. Welcome to the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast. Every week, we open this podcast with a reading of the preamble to the Detroit City Charter, read by the one and only Bryce Detroit. The City Charter is our constitution, which defines our rights and the way government should work. I'm Donna Gibbons-Davidson, President and CEO of the Eastside Community Network.
And I'm Sam Robinson, founder of Detroit 1 Million.
Thank you for listening in and supporting this expanded effort to build another platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. The purpose of this podcast is to encourage Detroit citizens to stay vigilant in the fight for justice and equality with a special call to action for Black Detroit. We seek to build awareness of our history as a gateway to freedom, a beacon for justice, and a laboratory of liberation. Welcome back to the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast.
How we doing?
Oh, well.
We're back from a brief hiatus.
Yeah, we are.
Donna went on vacation. How was that?
I did. It was amazing. I went on my first cruise ever.
Oh, wow.
And wow, I just could not imagine what it was going to be like. We did stops in Jamaica, and, you know, that was just so enriching. The connecting to the culture and the people and, you know, this feeling of diaspora. And then the second really exciting place we went was in Mexico, in Tulum, Mexico, to the Mayan ruins. And wow, it was just a really beautiful place, wonderful people. So I got a lot of rest and came home and, you know, had to get my head back in the game for a minute.
Mayan ruins is crazy. That is something like, you know, you got pictures that you can show me. I want to see those.
I do.
Yeah,
I do have pictures. I will.
Send it to the group chat.
I will. The thing that really got me about the Mayan ruins was, first of all, we are, so much of what we learn is Eurocentric, right? So we learn about the pyramids, but then from a European standpoint that tries to omit Africa from this African nation in Egypt. And so the brilliance of other people is sometimes obscured, but clearly these structures were built by people. I mean, so many people have heard of Stonehenge. Stonehenge ain't got nothing on this, okay? The other thing is that the Mexican government has done such a beautiful job of maintaining and creating this visitor space. It is absolutely beautifully maintained. they said things like, well, before you come here, you have to make sure that you're in good physical condition and you don't have any joint disease. And I've got arthritis in my right knee. And I was like, maybe not. But then we had to meet where the people were convening to go on the cruise. And I looked around and I was like, yeah, I'm as good as some of these folks. I can do it. But when we got there, it was really not a bad walk. It was very comfortable. It was very beautiful. There's palm trees in the middle of ruins. It was just a wonderful and very hot experience.
Well, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting harassed by ballot petitioners while you were gone. But maybe that's a good segue into what I really want to focus in on.
Well, before we do that, I just want to take a moment to stand in recognition of the late and great Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick.
Yes.
Whose career in politics was, cut short because of scandals involving her son. Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick is one of the first people that I met in politics where I'm completely admired the way she carried herself, the way that she was able to command a room, and just the dignity with which she engaged in a political discourse. And like I said, I believe her political career was shortened from circumstances outside of her control, but it's important they remember the amazing woman that was Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick.
She was the second Black woman to ever serve in the U.S. House. After she was elected in 1996, she was the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus from 2007 to 2009. A lot of folks on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook last night, after the news came out earlier yesterday afternoon that she had passed away, sending their condolences to the Kilpatrick family.
Yeah. She was really a pioneer in so many ways. And, look, she always wore her natural hair. And that's just such a significant thing for Black women that she stood loud and proud nationally. I don't mean loud like obnoxious, but she was very outspoken in her strength and her beliefs and her people, and representing us on a national stage always felt very good. So we do honor her. We do appreciate the contribution she made to our community as a whole, to the nation, and also to Black women who needed at that time role models to look up to.
Yeah, well, my condolences to her family. And when people pass away, it's always difficult, but also, I appreciate the celebration of folks who in other contexts might not be celebrated, right? Because of her son. I'm reading this political story from 2008, talking about how family ties dog Kilpatrick's re-election. She has become increasingly targeted as the mother and steadfast defender of scandal-plagued Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. Kwame gave an interview with Zeke of New Era. Did you see that?
I heard about it.
Yes, he was defending himself and saying things that I'm not sure are true.
No, I'm not going to revisit that. I lived through him, Kwame, as mayor, and I know what I believe about that. But I also know that I'm a mother. Yeah. And Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick was a brilliant politician and also a mother. And I will never fault a mother for continuing to love, support, and believing in her child. That is what mothers can and should do. We can't put the burden of a grown person's mistakes on the mother. So we can honor the mother and recognize also that she suffered a great deal of grief when her son was in prison. I can't think of anything worse to happen to any mother than that. And so my compassion has always been there. Whatever my political disagreements were with Kwame Kilpatrick, it never extended to the mother. I think that Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick carried herself in a wonderful way. Remember that children have mothers and fathers, right? And sometimes fathers can be very influential. He certainly had a very, very strong-minded, influential father who I believe played roles that were unhelpful to his son. And I don't want to spend this time talking about Kwame or even his self-defense or anything like that, but I do want to honor his mother.
Sure. Earlier this week, this was earlier last week now, you guys might have seen, I had posted on Twitter, this man that was soliciting a petition for a initiative to require voter identification and require proof of citizenship for voter registration.
Right.
he came up to me saying that this was going to make it easier for people who have already registered to vote. That was the line that he said. And I told him, I said, who told you that? And he said, the woman that's paying me, this woman named Dawn. And I go, I don't think Dawn is telling you the truth. And he goes, I don't think you're telling me the truth. And you'll see in the video if you look up, I was nearly attacked by this man. I made a police report on him. He threatened my life. The police called me back today saying he's not going to be a problem anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so, I mean, it's just, late stage capitalism. The idea that these ballot firms that are soliciting GOP-backed Republican initiative to make it harder. I mean, that is the goal. It might not be the stated goal, but it is by some Republicans that will tell me, yes, in fact, it should be harder to vote. It shouldn't be easier to vote. That's what the sentiment behind these initiatives is to make it harder for the public to vote, to put up more barriers because they believe. And I mean, we know the times in which we have voter fraud, right? At the University of Michigan, where there was one student, Chinese foreign exchange student, who voted. Of course, felony charges out against him. I don't know the status of that case. Right. But when fraud happens, it's usually caught. Hamtramck had some voter fraud issues.
Yeah, but they're not really talking about voter fraud. They say it's voter fraud, and that's the way they phrase it. But the reality is that it's rooted in a belief about who is a legitimate American, who represents American. You hear some of these same folks talking about real Americans, red-blooded Americans, whatever it is, certainly not red-skinned Americans, whatever it is that they decide has defined real Americans. And when they feel as though the voices and the power of so-called, quotation marks, real Americans are being threatened by these people who are coming in here and taking our resources like original Americans, Native Americans, or like the people they kidnapped or the people they bring in here to produce cheap labor, right? When they feel as though those rights are being threatened by what they consider to be imposter Americans, ethnic Americans, then there's this desire to crack down so that real Americans, white Americans, can have the outsized influence in politics. We have to understand this is not new. Prior to all of these conversations about voter fraud, you had poll taxes, you had, grandfather clauses, and sheer violence keeping people away from the polls. Even the way that people have been admitted into American citizenship, this nation was built on the grounds that were occupied by people who were indigenous to this land. And they did not become American citizens capable of voting until the 20th century, okay? They were here and not able to vote. You have immigration law that determines how many people from which places can come into America. But about 10 or 15 years ago, there was all of this talk about the fact that American society was growing with so many black and brown people that pretty soon white people would be a minority, an ethnic minority in the United States. And since then, there's been an effort that has been reinstated or just grown on steroids to return real Americans to their place of power. You might also look at what's happening in national universities, at Harvard, at Columbia, and at U of M, at these institutions for higher education or higher learning. One of the things that's happening is you have so many Chinese students and so many African students and Cambodian students, people from all over the world taking up spaces in these universities that used to be bastions of privilege for white males. And if you're just going to base it on test scores and grades and extracurricular activities, a lot of immigrant populations work very hard to outcompete Americans in those spaces. And so now there is a crackdown on the H-1 visas and people even being occupying this space. And it has to do with white supremacy, I believe. And so the crackdown on voter fraud is really a crackdown on multiracial democracy and a desire to elevate one group over the other. And it's really interesting because the way that you can prove you're a citizen is either with a passport or an original copy of your birth certificate. Mm-hmm. And we know who has passports. It's not poor folks of any race, right? It's not black folks. It's certainly not going to be any other underprivileged group. And so that gives you the opportunity to disqualify people because they don't have a passport or an original copy of their birth certificate. And the interesting thing with that, too, is that if your driver's license does not qualify you as a citizen, if your driver's license name does not match the name on your birth certificate, then you're expected to also produce evidence that you legally changed your name. Now, you already have to do all of that to get a driver's license, but then to have to do it once again in order to document that you're a citizen adds another procedural barrier.
And think about how all of this came to head. Donald Trump, who before running for president in 2016 had accused American elections of being fraudulent with no evidence, did it in 2020. And he did it in 2020 in such a way that, to me, based on my reporting, about half the Republicans that I talked to, a good 50%, truthfully, honestly believe that Trump was the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. We know that he was not. Joe Biden won.
But look.
And now this is the floodgates of we need to stop fraud. And what are they doing? This.
Yeah, but you have to look at what they mean. In 2020, Trump would have won Michigan without Detroit.
Yeah. And he would have
won. He would have won Pennsylvania without Philadelphia. He would have won Georgia without Atlanta. He would have won Arizona without whatever that county is. Is it Maricopa County?
Yeah, and remember the videos that he would post on Twitter that just completely misrepresented. I mean, it's kind of funny. All these ballot petition canvassers are misrepresenting their thing. Trump on Twitter would misrepresent what a election worker at TCF at the time was doing, and say, "Look at this white van that came in. They're stuffing ballots. They're creating ballots out of thin air." Something that he actually asked. I believe the Attorney General of Georgia, the state of Georgia, is the reason why he had the Fulton County charges.
Yeah, but
he actually asked to come up with votes.
And he did, because in his mind, he's got to offset the votes by black and brown people.
Because they're not legitimate to him.
They're not legitimate because, and this is not new. This has been electioneering that goes back, decades, if not centuries. In 1925 or thereabouts, when Judge, oh my goodness, what is his name? The judge there's a judge in Detroit, Frank Murphy. When Frank Murphy won the Recorder's Court judgeship, you had people accusing Detroiters of voter fraud. Then black Detroiters, they said that you were using pool halls as their addresses. And there's widespread voter fraud. Whenever there's an election result that goes against the grain of white supremacy, you're going to have this. With Barack Obama, they couldn't say that because he won substantial numbers of votes. So what they said is he's not really American. So they questioned his right to lead America by saying he's not American and really digging into the foreign sound of his name and also his father's ethnicity. But it's really interesting to me that you have a president doing that in 2025 who is married to Melania, who is not the first person he married, who was not a U.S. citizen born in the United States, but the second person he married who was not born in the United States. It's clear the problem is not immigrants. It's black and brown immigrants that constitute a threat. And the same people who cannot stand foreign accents when it comes to a Mexican person love to hear Melania speak.
And if you don't believe Donna, just look at Elon Musk's Twitter over the last 3 months. I mean, it has gone from just complete. I mean, he's platforming white supremacist and Nazi accounts on his own account, talking about look at this group of black kids that are getting in a fight, or look at this video where this black man is beating on this white woman. I mean, they're just.
Where is Elon Musk from? He is from South Africa.
Right.
And white South Africans, Afrikaners, are the only immigrants that this administration is intent on bringing here, because apartheid to them is still the proper governmental structure. And the people who are protesting that, who feel victimized by the ending of apartheid, are the ones they want to embrace. So I think that we don't need to make a mistake about it. And so I want to go back to your conversation though about the canvasser.
Yeah.
Because you got into a documented, conflict with a canvasser.
Yes.
And I didn't know about that when I got into an undocumented conflict with a canvasser. I didn't really do anything, and he certainly didn't threaten me. In fact, he started running away from me everywhere I stood. Sure. It was kind of fun. I would see him and approach him as he was talking to people. He'd go running away with his little clipboard because he knew I was going to confront him with the truth. I was bothered by him, really bothered, because this is a young Black man, well-dressed, looking like everybody's favorite nephew. And the credibility of his presence was being, used to get people to sign. There's a senior citizen I know, as I was walking out of Rivertown Market, I was telling her about it, and she said, "Oh yeah, I just signed it." And I said, you do know what that means, right?" And she said, "I just didn't want to read all of that, and that's not the way he explained it to me." And as much as I was frustrated with her for not reading all of that, you have to think about, the vision of senior citizens as people's eyes decline, and the tiny print that the ballot initiative stuff is written on. I was so outraged. I had to really calm down. And I thought, what can we do? I think part of what I'd like to do is create flyers to pass out to people as those canvassers are there, so that as they approach them, we have other information. Yeah. But we've got to counter it, because what they're trying to do is make it more difficult for people to vote. And they're using the language of justice to do that.
They did it in 2022 during Secure My Vote. They would go into Black barbershops and say, this is going to make it easier for you to vote. This is going to make it easier for Black Michigan residents to vote. They would do that with Let My Kids Learn, the voucher program. They would completely misrepresent. And I said this on Twitter. I said, this sort of deception has been a long practice of these ballot firms, especially when circulating Republican-backed proposals in majority Democratic places like Flint, Saginaw, Detroit, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids. I've seen it in all those communities where I will approach a ballot canvasser and they will completely lie to the point where they're inversing what they're doing, right? They're saying this is going to make it easier to vote when, in fact, it would make it harder to vote. But
this is not new for them, okay? They use the language of school reform to dismantle public schools. They use the language of welfare reform to create lifetime limits. When people on the right want to undermine our rights, they always justify it using the language of reform.
How terrible. This was from 2022, a circulator that was doing Let My Kids Learn, which was a voucher program, right? It would have sent public funds to private schools. Told me that they're gathering signatures to help special needs kids. Mm-hmm. It was so ridiculous that Jocelyn Benson quote tweeted my tweet in 2022, something that she would never do today. But I just, there are state legislators like Jeremy Moss, Mallory Monroe that have introduced legislation to combat this exact deceptive practice that these ballot firms deploy. And it's the
first thing you can do is you can stop for paid canvassers. Some states have banned paid canvassers. That's been discussed in the state of Michigan. I am canvassing for two things I deeply care about. One of them is invest in my kids, and the other one is money out of politics. I'm not doing it because I'm paid. I'm doing it because I'm passionate. If you really want people to come into Detroit, if you have young Black and other disadvantaged people coming into the city because they passionately believe in these causes, even if I disagree, that's a whole lot different than knowing that they're being bankrolled to come in here and getting $5 a signature to mislead our people. There are rules around canvassing that they're violating. You're supposed to either read what's on the initiative or allow people to read it. You're not supposed to just paraphrase inaccurately what's there and ask people to sign. So I think we could monitor that more effectively as well.
I think we could. There are 3 voter ID ballot initiatives. Are you aware of that? There's the require voter identification and require proof of citizenship. There is the citizenship requirement for voting. And there's another one.
They're all very similar. I did look at that.
Republicans couldn't come to an agreement over one
Right.
language set of one petition summary, so they had to do several. I see here. This is Ballotpedia that I'm looking at right now. This is fair. This is how they describe the Invest My Kids. The title is Fair Share Surcharge on Annual Taxable Income Initiative.
Right.
To require a fair share surcharge on annual taxable income of more than $1 million for joint returns, $500,000 for single returns at a rate of 5%, using the money to be spent on funding local public school districts. There is the ranked choice voting amendment, not to be confused with the voter ID amendment, and there is minimum wage for tipped workers.
Yeah.
And so, you guys are going to see these ballot canvassers at Meijer, at Kroger, at outside of the Dollar Tree, CVS, downtown at the Riverwalk, outside of events, downtown in Capitol Park. I've seen them. In Paradise Valley, like outside of Fixin's restaurant, I've seen them. Yeah, I mean, I've seen them, at Eastern Market. Obviously, you guys know that they're there every weekend at Eastern Market.
Are you seeing people from the ranked choice voting for Invest in My Kids, for Money Out of Politics there as well?
So I actually, we had one of my buddies, shout out to Local 514, he's a concrete mason, signed up, registered to vote. And for the first time, he's a 30-year-old guy, never registered to vote. So we got him registered to vote. And then his first political action ever, his first opportunity was to sign Money Out of Politics. Oh. And they did that. There was 2 canvassers that were volunteers that showed up outside of Two Birds on Sunday. It was like 2 Sundays ago. Right. We were eating the Egg Hunt food truck. Shout out to the Egg Hunt food truck. I love the oxtail burritos. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, they're so good. You need to go out there. They're where are they? I think 11 to 3 p.m. every Sunday outside of Two Birds on Kercheval.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's so good.
All right.
Yeah, black-owned food truck. They do a really great job in
well, I think that the oxtail
breakfast burrito
that kind of gave that one away.
Yes,
right?
yes. But very, very good food. We talked to those folks there. I told them that unfortunately I can't sign the petition, but here are several people that are willing to sign it, and they did.
You can't sign the petition because you're a journalist?
It is you are putting your name on a public record, a public document. If I were to do that, then I would no longer be able to cover the effort
that's
in an ethical way.
I don't think people understand some of those journalistic rules. I want to talk about a little bit more, but we've got Kenneth Russell here today.
Oh, yeah.
And it's always a treat to talk to Kenneth. Kenneth, what's up?
Horrible.
Oh, no.
I say that because day 5 of the government still being shut down?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be more than 5 days, probably. Again, it'll be 10 days, then 20 days, and then 30 days.
Well, hopefully it won't be that long.
Out.
I think that the question is going to be one of politics. What's horrible about that in your view?
Well, they act like a bunch of kids the majority of the time. So it's like, what are y'all doing? Y'all supposed to be like our leaders and our organizers of the country, and y'all are fighting like 5-year-olds for power.
Is that what you think is happening?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because
I think that the executive branch is snatching power away from just about everything, and Democrats are losing power, or people who are not part of MAGA are losing power in so many ways. I see so many violations of the law by the president, whether it is interfering with free speech, coming after colleges and universities, newspapers, TV stations and radio stations where he's suing and threatening to shut people down. I see him being able to deport people and without any kind of due process. And I see him being able to profile people based on how they look in those types of things. I think there were some children in Chicago who were arrested.
They actually took the funding for schools in Chicago.
They took the funding for schools in Chicago. They have shut down funding for a lot of programs that used to exist. They are replacing qualified people with highly unqualified white men. And so what I see is an administration that is overreaching in terms of its power, and the Democratic minority in the House and Senate trying to hold on to some very basic things even while they're losing those things. I think if it's school children fighting, then the outcomes are, oh, well, you stop fighting and everybody eats. But if the Republicans have their way and they cut out Medicaid supports, then what's going to happen is that people's health insurance is going to be so unaffordable that we'll have more uninsured people. And I'm so afraid of budgets passing and the executive power going unchecked. Now what the president is saying is, I'm just going to fire everybody and cause pain to Democratic cities and Democratic employees. We're going to fire all of them. It just doesn't, it feels like something that's a lot more dangerous than school children right now.
And it's like you're pushing things beyond your abilities. Like the governor of Illinois had even tried to get the 24th Amendment called on him because he's going against his abilities, and the other two branches are not.
He's going against what we believe his abilities should be, right? Mm-hmm. So you have three branches of government. You have the presidency, the executive, you have the legislative, which is Congress, and then you have the judicial, which is courts. Judicial is supposed to interpret the law based on the Constitution to decide, is this legal? And you have the Supreme Court saying, you know what, it's okay if the president just voids legislative power. If the president fires people who should not be fired because he doesn't get to appoint them, if the president zeroes out budgets that were allocated by Congress, it's scary to me because I'm a political science major and I'm a policy person to see this amount of overreach. I wonder how far is too far. Now he's saying he's going to occupy cities with the military, and he's planning on sending the military to Portland, Oregon, and Chicago. And a lot of people fear they'll come to Detroit. And will anybody be able to stand up for our rights? Do our rights really exist like they used to?
Will Hakeem and Chuck be able to do it? That's your answer, I guess, there.
I think that
he's actually threatened, like Governor Whitmer of
Trump.
He's threatened.
J.D. Vance has, yeah.
Yeah, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance has actually threatened to send the what was it called?
The National Guard to
the
Detroit.
National Guard here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a big, there's a lot of people who want to see that happen. Yeah. And it's so bad now that when crimes happen, people think, oh, wait, what if this crime gets a lot of attention and that causes Trump to send people there? Meanwhile, you have a South Carolinian judge whose house burns to the ground. They say it's not arson. Right. But her house burns to the ground after she opposes Trump.
Yeah, I was just about to say that next. I saw that last night.
Yeah, and it's so, I think for me, my hope is that the Republican Party sees the limits of its power and understands that we cannot end health insurance subsidies. He only wants to do it because Obama put it in place. And then look what's happening with farms, right? Do you know what's happening with farms, Kenneth?
Farms?
Uh-huh.
Mm-mm.
So all of these tariffs have taken place, and we're going to economic war with the world. And China used to be the biggest purchaser of American-produced soybeans. They're no longer purchasing soybeans produced by American farmers. They're purchasing those soybeans from Canada and other places around the world. They're being displaced. So farmers are literally at the brink of bankruptcy. And now what Trump is saying is he's going to pour $10 billion into saving American farms. But that can only last for so long. Farmers actually have to earn income because how much subsidy can we continue to bring them? So no, I think that it is terrible that we have the kind of government right now where there's a group of people who are determined to impose their will on everybody else.
Yeah, and it's very scary when you're doing it with these, ICE agents who are not military nor law enforcement trained. The training to become an ICE agent has been expedited. It's now easier than ever to become an ICE person.
Yeah.
It's in there.
And then they carry out their actions wearing masks with no identification.
That is very odd. That's not a thing that happens in, I mean, it is very easy to just be like, oh my gosh, like this, we are watching authoritarianism in the United States in a very real and just, I can't say it in any other way as a neutral, objective person that is reporting what occurs, right? I mean, there is no factual basis for sending military into any U.S. city.
No.
There is no strategy that involves National Guard nor military troops that could be effective to any degree in fighting crime in urban places. It's just ridiculous. It's actually insulting that they would even just why not just say we want to terrorize our cities? Why not just say that? Because I think that would be more. I mean, obviously, probably behind the closed doors. That's there, but.
I mean, you know what the some
nobody
people
thinks
say,
that this is to fight crime.
People, no, they don't think this is. I mean, everything that he says is so dishonest. Okay, he says, listen, there's a surge of crime, but he said it during the elections. There's a surge of these Haitian people coming in, destroying communities.
No evidence.
And these gangs of people. That kind of rhetoric is used to justify violence. And it's always been used to justify violence. Remember back in the day when a black man could be killed because he was accused of doing something with no evidence, no court hearing. That's how you control populations. That's how you end up in fascistic situations. There's always the dehumanization, the accusations without any basis for truth. And quite frankly, people don't care. Remember there was the mass killing by a trans person, I believe in Georgia, and they cared about that. But then you turn around and you have the person who did what they did in Grand Blanc, Michigan, and they found out, wait a minute, this guy is a former Marine, and all of a sudden there's no effort to crack down on Marines. Some crimes matter and some crimes don't matter because they're being politicized. And in all of that, it's not good for us. So my way of dealing with it, for my mental health, is to focus on local issues, which are outside of my control as well, but I think I can have influence over those.
Yeah.
So local elections, local power building, getting us ready for what may happen, because my husband, Kevin, is just one of these optimists who believes this will not last forever. This is going to come to an end sooner than later. And if and when it does, then we're going to have to be prepared to help rebuild everything that has been torn apart. What can we do on a local level? So today is the first day for the Black Detroit Democracy Class Series. And I'm really excited about that. We printed out a booklet I created, and that's going to be distributed to everybody. We had over 60 people register for the first class.
Awesome.
I've got guest speakers who are amazing. I'm really excited about Jamon Jordan coming in on October 29th to talk about the creation of Black Detroit, how we became a Black city. There's nobody who could do it better than Jamon. I'm really excited about having Orlando come on November 12th to discuss how to shift narratives, also the power of narrative in a political moment, because that goes back to these narratives around gang violence in cities justifies bringing the police in. Can we create new narratives around what's happening? Narratives around school failure justify school takeovers. And if you don't have any kind of power or influence over the narrative about your community, then that narrative can be manipulated in ways that we've seen over the years. So that's my way of dealing with it, is coping with this. Let's get hyper-local. I live in Detroit. I don't live in the United States as a whole. I live in this very specific place. And in this place, we are in the middle of an election right now, a really, really significant election in so many ways. Are you tuned into the local elections at all?
For Detroit?
Yes.
I haven't checked up with it since the last time we interviewed somebody.
All right. So what I will say to you, Kenneth, and everybody who's listening is all politics start locally. Any kind of change you ever want to see in the United States always started somewhere in somebody's community, people organizing for that and building outwards. I believe what, among many other things, the administration wants us to do right now is to feel powerless. They want us to feel frustrated and feel like there's nothing we can do, because if you can immobilize people with feelings of powerlessness, then you can take them over. And so my question is, where does our power lie? You've got power right inside of Southeastern High School. How are you using your power at school?
Well, I try and get everyone's opinions on things and to try and shape the school into a better place, and even going to administration after I talk to some of the students and giving them suggestions on what we can do to better the school and the activities. Like for our homecomings, we sell our homecomings right when school started, and I told them like, hey, why don't we try and get the kids' opinions on our homecomings throughout the school year, and then over the summer and our Level Up Expos, we start pushing tickets out and get the space ready, like months ahead of time. And then also with the freshmen, the freshmen have been the majority of the problem in our school this year. So we were talking about trying to bring our 6-hour lunch back, because they took 6-hour lunch because it's too many lunch periods, but it's too many kids populated into one lunchroom, and kids are not able to eat enough because most kids don't eat at home. So them needing the like seconds and stuff is needed, and then drama being builded up from freshmen starting beef with the upperclassmen, or upperclassmen starting beef with the freshmen, and we want to be able to separate that and bring better. What's the word? I can't think of the word, but
Well, listen, I'm really proud of you for the leadership role that you're playing. I have a question. Are any of the leadership roles you're playing in school influenced by what you're learning through Caitlin and Dion?
Majority of them.
Shonda? Can you talk about that?
Well, like learning how to communicate with others it's always been a hard thing for me. You know me since I first came here. When I first came here to up to now, I didn't used to talk like that, nor was around nobody. Especially when I first started podcasts, I just used to say like one, maybe 2 words.
Yes, you were so quiet.
And then after that, I just didn't say nothing else for the rest of the podcast. And then now I'm up here speaking more, and voicing out my energy towards things. And it's like, wow.
When did you discover that you're brilliant?
I don't know.
Have you discovered that yet? It's so amazing to me because you're such a brilliant young man. And I think, helping people understand their gifts is so important to the work that we do, right? It makes me so excited to see people one day wake up wait, do I have something to say? And I have some people want to listen. And, that's another thing we can change, is helping a new generation of people who bring what God gave them, which is, absolute brilliance, to the bear. A lot of times young Black men learn from a very young age they're not good at stuff. You're not this, you're not that, you're not this, you're not that. And by the time you get to your age, you have more consciousness of what you're not than what you are. Yeah. And I hope that you are discovering what you are is really just amazing to
That's a good way to put that. I was never good at math, and so that's the reason why I do what I do now.
I'm not either.
Well, that was what they told me. I was like, oh, you're not good at math.
I mean, I still push myself and try and at least get somewhere between a D or a C in my math class.
You need a B at least.
But you know what? If you knew that you were capable of giving A, you give it that extra mile. The reality is that I'm not good at math is not a you thing or a you thing. It is an American thing. American people do not believe we're good at math. And Black American people really don't think we're good at math, right? Mm-hmm. And so in other cultures, you're not good at math. You just learn it.
Right.
You're not good at reading. You just learn it.
Right.
But in the United States, only certain people can do math, and therefore only certain people push through to learn it. I used to, in another world, do education. I ran a charter school company, and I studied education leadership and at Wayne State, and read a lot about this. And when I learned about the whole concept of efficacy, self-efficacy is the driver of this, right? You don't believe you're good at math, and therefore you work through it just enough to get a C or a D. But you don't keep pushing because you don't expect to succeed because you're not good at math. When you think you're good at something, you keep at it. You have a higher level of frustration tolerance. You don't give up when things get hard. Yeah. And so I'll say to you, you are capable of being good at math. You just have to practice it more. Like anything else. You weren't good at public speaking a couple of years ago either, right? And now look at you. You weren't good at a lot of things that you have done. And so if you don't choose to pursue math, that's a choice. But don't not pursue it because you're not good at that. I have one final thing to say about that. My oldest sister, Linda, was not good at math or science, right? She graduated from high school and she just knew she wasn't good at math or science. She studied performing arts at Cass Tech because she was not good at math or science. And sometime in her 20s, she decided she wanted to become a nurse. And she became a nurse despite not being good at math or science. And she found out, you know what, I could be good at both. I've seen people grow into those capacities. There is nothing that you can't do. You just have to decide how hard you want to work to get there. So that's my little preaching thing. And, even after high school, you can change. We can continue growing and learning all through our lives. But we live in a world that diminishes our value from the time before we're born. When we're born into a world that puts us at a deficit. When people see you, they don't say, oh, look at this brilliant young man. They say, oh, look at this kid. And then when your brilliance is treated as exceptional rather than normal. That's why we have gifted classes for the smart ones and slow classes for the other ones. But we're all gifted because that's how we're made. And so, yeah, I'm really happy to see you lift up. We're not all gifted the same, right? We all have different gifts, but we are all gifted. I believe that, don't you, Sam?
Yeah, I do. I was discouraged from even trying to learn it because it was just, a pain for the teachers that had to talk slower and be like, I thought I explained this. Are you not listening to me when I'm...
But most teachers are also afraid of math. Did you know that?
I had a math teacher that was a basketball coach, and so not a lot of math, a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of teachers, they've done surveys of teachers, and elementary school teachers have math anxiety. Anxiety is cultural.
Yes, I have that as well. I have math anxiety. I am literally, math will come into my life right now. Even I have Excel spreadsheet anxiety. I'm not going to open your Excel spreadsheet and put data into it. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do VLOOKUP, and I never will.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I love Excel so much when I learned how to do some things with it. Listen, I worked at Vanguard Community Development Corporation. We had a teen center there, the Spot Teen Center. And one summer, I was hanging out with the young people, and they were playing spades every day. Now, I've been playing spades since I was 14 years old, and I consider myself to be a spades expert. Mm-hmm. I did not win a single hand. Mm-hmm. How did I not win a single hand against all these young people who aren't good at math? You know why? Because they were counting cards, and they were able to classify, count, and outplay me. Yet, if you talk to them, they're not good at math. People can, sit up here and calculate, football odds or basketball odds without thinking because you're not conscious of the fact that that's math. The other thing is the extent to which you're using math and you don't even understand you're using math in your world. So I reject the narrative that you're not good at math. I accept the possibility that you have not been taught well.
Is that I've always been in the self-contained class since I have autism. So I have an IEP. So from my entirety of my elementary to late middle school years, they always taught me at least 5th grade level to maybe a little bit of 6th grade level of math, and especially during the pandemic. And then when I got to high school, I was bad at algebra, but I'm good at geometry and finance. Mm-hmm. And then also I'm in an IT class. I do coding, and I know the hardware in the computer. So, and the thing about it, with hardware computers, you have to know math.
Right.
So when they're like, oh, this takes, if 1 terabyte is this, how many gigs would you have this? Have? I'm like, oh, I'll say, I'm just saying something out the window. 20 megabytes, gigabytes, and good job. Because I have to compress terabytes into gigabytes.
And that's my point. My point is that now, it's interesting that you state that you have autism because autism has been in the news a lot.
They say people with autism are the best at math.
That's one of the stereotypes. I mean, there's such a wide variety of people who have been diagnosed with autism, but I think there's a lot of discrimination against people with autism. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, in class, even though I speak well and I present myself well, when they find out that I have autism and I have extra time on my assignments or a second attempt on my quiz, they be like, he don't need it. He's too smart for that. No. I'm like, well, in these classes, I had to bust my tail all my life to get to this point. And then y'all talking about I don't need it, but y'all the main ones who come to me asking me for help on your work.
Right. But I think that because of that, I think people look at people with autism sometimes as people who have less intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's not, you process information differently, right? Is that what would distinguish you from other people without autism?
Yeah, because like whenever we have like a guest speaker or just any kind of speaker, I sit there, I either open up my computer, my phone, I'll take a pen and paper out, and I take notes. And like, why you take notes on everything? Because I'm like, you don't know what they're going to ask us. And then you don't know if this information is going to be given towards you again later on down the line. So it's good to take notes on everything because you don't know what life is going to throw at you.
Well, that's true. I think that's true for many people, right? Taking notes and documenting, that's certainly a great learning strategy. We can talk about that too. But before we talk about learning strategies, I really want to get to how do you process information differently from in your understanding? How does autism impact your ability to learn?
Depending on what it is, like science, math, science, ELA, and social studies, and IT. If you were to sit me down in front of any of those, for example, I will sit there. The information that you give me, I'm gonna output it either in the way that a professional does it, or in an advanced manner. Like in my history class, my social studies teacher has said that I am on the college level when it comes down to my history. And I'm even on the Detroit Historical Society. So it's like, depending on what it is, I can proceed to information to a higher degree. Now, going back to math, that is seeing all these numbers, shapes,
letters.
Right. Don't get me started on
I know, I don't know algebra neither, man.
So when I sit there and I look at it, I freeze.
Yeah.
But then you get it in the same way when it comes down to geometry. But with geometry, you're pointing and you're rotating. So when I got to that, it's like, well, this is easy. But at the same time, it's difficult.
I think people don't understand it. I think all of the attention that Robert Kennedy has brought to it, we're not going to do this, Tylenol causes autism and stuff like that. I had an uncle who I believe now was autistic, but nobody got diagnosed with autism when I was young. But when you reflect back on how he was, it's like, I wonder if he was autistic, especially because I have cousins who have sons who are very similar in some ways to him. People act like it's new, and it's not.
It's been around.
It's been around. It's been documented since the early 20th century, even the term. But, sometimes it's only certain types of people who get diagnosed with it. Do you believe your autism is a disability?
I see it as a stepping stone, and I see it as a wall. Because like, depending on what it is, like I can't use my hands. Like my hands are one of my weakest things. I can't even tie my shoe. And I'm about to be 17 in like a month. And I can't tie my shoe. And sometimes when I speak, I slander. And when I start talking too fast, then I have to regather myself. But at the same time, I don't let me not knowing how to tie my shoes get the best of me. I could still do this and that without having to tie my shoes.
That's right.
And me with my speech, I practice because I do voice acting. So when I'm in my room and I do my voice acting,
Which is so cool, by the way. That's sick.
I practice my my speeches. I'll do monologues, and then I'll do my own version of the monologue. So I can practice on thinking about information coming to my head on the spot and outputting it in a proper manner.
Okay. So when it comes to politics, you have concerns at the federal level about what's happening with the shutdown, right? What are your concerns locally?
Locally, I'm concerned about our health care, and not even just our health care, our food and our neighborhoods, because without the federal funding, our states and cities won't have the money to buy our food and our products to help sustain for our cities and towns. And then on top of it, for like the stuff around us, like buildings, buildings, crossroads, streets. Because without any of that, then it's going to cause casualties in the community, and then people not being able to eat. That's going to have a lot of more deaths because what are you doing? We don't have food to feed our people.
All right.
We can't. What you going to think? We think we're going to eat each other? Because we're not cannibals.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have other thoughts on that. Our ancestors used to grow food, right? So to a certain extent, are we overly dependent on food that we don't control? I wonder about that. And are there ways for us to, I know that we can't grow enough food to close some of the gaps, but I think that we can grow more food and be more self-sufficient.
And that's another thing. A good handful of people don't know how to grow crops. And especially with with black descent and other minorities, we should know how to plant.
We lost our skills, right?
I have a whole crop garden. Me and my family, we have a whole crop garden outside on the side of our house. We have onions, corns. We have an apple tree in the front of our house.
How many days a week do you eat food that you've grown?
It's still new, so we haven't got that much. We got like little pinches, like these strawberries.
So you're getting there.
Yeah, like we had these strawberries. Oh my God,
They're good.
Yes.
You got some cherry tomatoes growing out there. Yeah, those grow real abundant. I got some in my apartment, like just some cherry tomatoes. And my roommate, who's vegan, shout out to Colin Jackson, Michigan Radio's finest reporter in Lansing. He'll just pull out a full bowl of these really sweet cherry tomatoes that we just grew in our backyard with like 1 inch of soil. Like it's concrete. It's like this much soil and then concrete. And we're just like, how are these tomatoes growing up onto our porch and everything? They're just going out there. So yeah, I want to learn more about exactly what you do. Maybe I should come out and see it.
And then the thing about it, I'm actually trying to advocate because I'm affiliated with 424 as well and the Hans Foundation and Mac Alive. So I'm trying to incorporate some what was it called? Agriculture, so we could teach youth how to plant and stuff, because if we learn how to plant now and if we were to go through a purge or the entirety of the nation goes black, we don't have to worry about relying how to learn to grow our foods, how to hunt, and we can just know how to do this off the spot.
Haven't had a blackout in a while. Donna, you were around for a Detroit blackout. What year was that?
Oh my goodness, was it 2002? Something like that.
Yeah, it was early 2000s.
It was early 2000s.
You've heard the stories?
Yeah, my mom and my older sister my mom was actually around the time right before she found out that she was pregnant with me.
What year were you born?
08.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Her and my sister were on my grandmother's block and they were watching wrestling. And as soon as I think it was John Cena and The Rock fighting, as soon as John Cena hit him, everything went dark.
Oh wow.
And everybody were outside in tents and stuff, having their whole fridge hooked up to their car so their fridge can blow cold air out. And I'm like, dang. And it was hot? No.
Yeah. Well, listen, it was actually August 14th, 2003. I was at work on East Grand Boulevard, and I lived at that time in Lathrop Village. And, I had a cell phone, but people also had corded phones. Phones were out. Everything was out. I went home. I had a minivan at that time with a television in it. So we sat in the minivan and watched videos because, we didn't have like...
Y'all ain't had YouTube.
Well, I mean, that was long before YouTube or even, the broadband did not reach people's cars in the same way. I don't remember broadband being much of a thing. So, yeah, that was a time for me. It was a learning thing. We couldn't understand how it happened. And so then the car ran out of gas and we were trying to figure out how to cook. But the most amazing thing about the blackout was the community found that it was dependent on each other, and people came out in communities and took care of each other. It was a very communal period of time. All the kids in the neighborhood were coming, they were all sitting in the minivan with us watching this. I think I just had the kids in there. They weren't, not me. We found ways to cook and feed each other. It was kind of an ideal time frame in that sense because we have to remember what we can do.
And did you hear about the dude who made plastic into oil?
I don't know about that dude.
No,
I don't know about
oil.
him. I see him. I
Plastic
don't believe
comes
him.
from oil, so understand
Yeah.
it is a petroleum-based product.
I see that.
Yeah,
I saw his. I think he's grifting.
Yeah, it's
I don't think it's worth celebrating him.
it's not worth celebrating.
I think it's cool though.
It's
I mean,
cool.
yeah, but I don't know. I think he's grifting. I saw that on the Instagram aggregation pages.
yeah. I mean, the reality is, I believe it can happen simply because for various reasons, but not with
Not new technology. He's
It's not new.
misrepresenting what he's doing.
Yes, and I have not seen that technology.
Shout out to him though.
Yeah, well, listen, everybody.
It's good for social.
It's his hook, right?
It is, and that's his thing. And yeah, well,
Yeah. So listen, Sam, I want to talk to you about something I saw on your socials.
Yeah.
You said that you realized that not everybody loves you or something like that, that you have detractors.
I just, I won't even, I'll leave it there. The people that hate me, you're listening to me right now. What are you doing? I don't know.
I was wondering how you feel about that.
Oh, well, in my professional career, white women have been a big roadblock because they feel like they're the true victims because they have to interact with white men versus me interacting with white women and men who discriminate against me. So I think that's just an ongoing battle, I guess. And I have respect for so many white women that have opened doors for me and that have been there for me. I mean, I could literally list them out. I won't because it's not relevant here. But it's not, I just, I think that my confidence in myself and the way that I portray myself, which is, not taking myself too seriously, I think there is a level of sort of not confusion or frustration, but I haven't gotten the level of pushback from the black elder establishment that probably looks at my tattoos on my hands and the way I'm dressed and is like, "What the hell, Sam?" They don't push back on me in the same way that white women in their 40s do, because they're threatened because they're mediocre and they're not good, and they recognize that I'm more talented than them at the exact thing that what they do.
Well, I went to Mercy High School, which is a majority white school in Farmington Hills. And let's just say I have personal experience in some of this. Okay. I was just like, my favorite time was when they accused me of cheating on the ACT and reported me to the school counselor because I got higher score than they did.
Oh, you told me that.
Yeah. I mean, and I realized, and then when I got to college at U of M, there was this one young lady who I worked at a bar, Rick's Cafe, and this lady worked with me, hated me. And so she went to our professor, Dr. Chaffers, and she said, "Oh, I can't stand Donna. She tries to be so smart. She tries to be so smart." And so he said, "How do you try to be smart? Either you are or you aren't." And I remember,
Right.
And I deal with that kind of thing, like
this
among my own peers from other black people.
Well, that's different. It's different. And I want to talk about the difference, right? Mm-hmm. In one instance, there is jealousy sometimes. And let me talk about the jealousy. Again, most black kids have learned from the time they're young that they're not smart. And that's emotionally devastating to people to be told. Most of the time when parents go to parent-teacher conferences, all they hear about is complaints about how this child needs to work on this and needs to work on that. And you adopt this negative self-identity, and then you see somebody else being treated differently or succeeding where you can't. And there's a natural sense of resentment and jealousy that can come into play because of your own self-worth. That's very different than the entitlement that I'm better than you that is bred into people from the time they're born. Yeah. And then having to confront the fact that they're not really better than you.
Right.
That is Megyn Kelly saying Barack Obama is not intelligent, or what did she say, that Kamala Harris is the most unintelligent person she's met. It's factually inaccurate. It's ridiculous, but it's very hard for people to deal with this sense of entitlement, this sense of superiority being dampened by these other people. And I would say with you, Sam, you're dealing with two issues. One, you're not white. well, 3 issues possibly, and then I'm going to throw them out, try them out, right? Sure. 1, you're not white. 2, you're young.
Yes, I think that's a big part of it.
And 3, your mother is white.
Yes.
And you have adopted an identity as a Black man. And that can be very threatening to people who feel as though you should identify with them. Why would you identify with these people instead of me when you can be one of ours that we mistreat? Carolyn, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I think that you're dealing with a number of evils here. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would. And I see the evils face head on. These evils work at the Detroit News and Free Press. I'll take the Detroit News a little bit out of it because the tweet is actually related to 2 individuals that are employees of the Detroit Free Press that are peering in on a conversation that I'm having privately about the fact that I'd never see them at the community events and forums that I've been going to over the last 6 months covering the Detroit municipal elections. The Detroit Free Press and News do not resource themselves in the same way that they do to cover Lansing. Mm-hmm. That is a fact. I challenge anyone to prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. Period. Yeah. That's all I have to say. I'm not, taking a right-wing anti-journalist. I'm certainly not, an independent journalist that is flirting with right-wing crazies and denigrating newsrooms. I am not, talking down on individual journalists. I wish the stories that Malachi Barrett and I were on the front pages of the Detroit News and Free Press because you have Detroit in the masthead in the name of your organization, but you cover Matt Hall and Trump and Governor Whitmer and Winnie Brinks to a level that you do not care about Mary Sheffield and Solomon Kinlock. And that's just true. I mean, anybody that wants to challenge me in an actual debate on that, I have the receipts to prove it. They don't publish things about local politics anymore. They just simply do not.
I'll challenge
you. They do. And they do. I will shout out to Louis Aguilar and Dana Alfano, who do a terrific job of covering the city. But I don't see them there at all the events that I go to. I just don't.
Okay. Let me just bring a little age into it, right?
Go ahead.
When I was young, the Detroit Free Press was staffed with so many more people. You had so many people to do so many things. And the Detroit Free Press was a locally owned newspaper. Over time, you started seeing these media conglomerates purchasing local newspapers all over. And now you have a board over a board over a board, and you don't necessarily have the editorial freedom that a Sam Robinson has, or even Malachi Barrett, who works for an independent nonprofit news organization. Right. So 2 things. 1 is media independence, and 3 is the sheer number of things that you have to cover and the fact that you just don't have the beat reporters that you used to have. I have a lot of friends who used to be journalists who are not in journalism anymore because journalism is a shrunken industry and it's harder to keep newspapers alive.
And it's the scarcity mindset that is causing the reactions that I received last week. It's the scarcity mindset. People are afraid because they view Sam Robinson as being way more popular and relevant than them. And they're like, what the hell? Why is this guy that just says whatever? That's how they feel.
But I think it's also if you are criticizing them.
I am. I'm being critical of them, yes.
I think that people, if you're openly critical of people.
Not people. I am openly critical of organizations headed by commercial real estate companies and a company called Next Gen Media or whatever the hell the company that owns the Detroit News is. In the Detroit News, I will say, Louis Aguilar.
You have Emil Elric. Emil Elric does cover City Hall all the time.
Job, yeah.
I think he does a terrible job, but I hear what you're saying. I think that the coverage of Black politicians by local media terrible. Is racist as hell.
It is,
and I'd rather have them.
I'm ready
be
to get
silent.
on that after a year of covering it myself, of every day, right, going to all of the events that are available.
I read an article the other day.
This is not coming from me. This is coming from the readers. This is coming from the public.
I read an article the other day
that I'm a part of.
I read an article the other day that said, I think it's the Detroit News said that because of these darn concert tickets that both mayoral candidates, Mary Sheffield and Solomon Kinlock, had shades of Kwame Kilpatrick. And it infuriated me because the person who's most similar to Kwame Kilpatrick in Detroit politics is Mike Duggan. They come out of the same political family in the McNamara administration. And, there's a whole political group around that. So to put that burden on two people running for office because of concert tickets and to demand and accusing them of influence peddling is a bridge way too far for me. It infuriated me.
I just thought it was racist. And I know, again, like, I tell Louis Aguilar, like, I love you, dude. Like, I tell Dan Alfano, like, you do an amazing job. I tell ML Elric, like, hey, we have a difference of opinion. But, I see him on the trail. He's a reporter, so I'm, like, supporting him. I support all the reporters. Like, even the reporters that I fundamentally disagree with, I still support their work. Period. Stop.
Yeah.
So when they compare Renata Miller and Willie Burton, because Renata had a domestic violence and is homophobic, and Willie got evicted, Louis, you have to push back on Richard Burr, the city editor at the Detroit News, who, when I asked Richard, what the hell is going on? Why don't you guys have the same level of care with the city that you do in Lansing? And he's like, well, that's just how it is. Ariel Crass used to cover the city of Detroit for Cranes. They got rid of her, and the entire Detroit news market were like, okay, well, I guess we can just stop covering the city of Detroit. It's not the same clicks.
I don't think there's a scarcity mindset in journalism as much as there is a journalism having to defend itself against all kinds of things. Right now, if you look there's a free speech issue in America, right? There's certain things you're allowed to say and certain things you're not allowed to say. And there's certain things that traditional media staff are not allowed to say, which is why we need independent sources. And I look at you, quite honestly, as guerrilla media, because you're just out there doing your own thing, and we need that. And we're blessed by that. But not everybody has your freedom, Sam. And sometimes a little bit of recognition is some people have to pay their bills and they don't have your freedom. And so when you say things like that, if they could, maybe they'd be in Lansing and they're stuck here in Detroit because of things that we are not always aware of. So I would just say, in that instance,
I'm at the point of, like, it's too important. I'm at that point.
It's important, and I agree, and I support the need for what you do. But I also know how hard it is for people working in failing institutions to sometimes come out, because they can't really say the institution is failing, right? So what they do is they defend themselves, and you become somebody who they feel like they have to defend themselves to. Yes. And that's not necessarily something that you have to do, because we see it.
And I love the Detroit Free Press in the news. I love all of Bridge, Detroit. I love Outlier. I love WDET. Shout out to Ryan Patrick Hooper, who I listen to.
But you can do things that other people can't. You have been liberated from.
I also live in the city of Detroit, where, when I ask Gary Miles, hey, Gary, I see that in your endorsement for Detroit City Council, in which you endorsed Karen Whitsett, you put Joe Tate instead of James Tate. Gary, does anyone on your editorial board made up of Nolan Finley and Caitlin Buss, do they live in the city of Detroit? Gary tells me, well, I actually don't know, because
you're talking about the Detroit News.
I'm talking about the Detroit News now. Yes.
Endorsed Karen Whitsett?
They endorsed Karen Whitsett. Yes, they did. They actually endorsed Gabby over Tyrone, which I thought was interesting. I don't know what Gabby said to them in their endorsement screening, but it's probably Nolan just hates Tyrone because he's a longtime Democrat.
Wow.
I just felt like, if you don't have anybody that lives in the community, why are you making endorsements for a community? That's just so bad.
I'm not disagreeing with that. Although, the Free Press does have people who live in Detroit.
They do, yes. I mean, they didn't endorse Karen Whitsett. I will say, I like Karen. I will say, I just,
She just doesn't believe that Charlie Kirk is racist.
This week,
you pointed that out.
I know. This week has been a tough week for, I think her and the people that are supporting her, like perhaps Bobby Lawrence or Scott Benson. I haven't heard from any of those individuals. When I first started covering D7 really closely, I did. Take it easy on Karen. You understand, Sam. You've been in Lansing. You know how it goes. Karen voted with Republicans on a proposal that, of course, she knows it wasn't going to pass. We all know, as people that understand, that the Senate is controlled by Democrats and the governor's office is controlled by. But why do you even? Well, you didn't need to vote for that. Why did you show up to vote for that?
Why did you pay $36 for doggy daycare to vote for that?
She says that was in order to get stuff through with her name on it, and it all goes to Sylvia Santana. Nothing that comes out of that, because she knows that the Senate is controlled by Winnie Brinks. Winnie Brinks isn't going to let it go through with Karen Whitsett's name on the earmark.
The reality is that Karen Whitsett has ties to Republicans in the state of Michigan, and she's had those ties, and she's the idea. I called Donald Trump and asked him to save. Thank you, Karen. That saved things, because either she's enormously unintelligent or she's lying. There's no way she thinks she's going to pick up the phone and call Donald Trump and influence policy if she's has any level of intelligence, because that's not how Donald Trump operates. Anybody who reads news sees
She
it's
said,
not.
if I get a no, it's not going to be from the House Speaker. It's going to be from the president.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't know.
I don't know.
You believe she has that influence over the president. Do
No.
you believe she can call the president up and get the president
What do
to
you think?
things?
You think we can get on the hold of Trump? He's going to give us some money for Detroit? No,
No,
Kenneth
I'm
is
saying, do
looking at
you
me.
believe Karen Whitsett can pick up the phone?
I don't think
and
anyone
call-
could pick. I don't think Mike Duggan could pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Trump, we need money." No, I don't think anyone could do that.
Suggestion that this is what she's doing to help us is either a lie or it's a sign of unintelligence. And since you don't think she's unintelligent, you don't want me to say this because that's your friend and I understand that, and you have been more than fair to her. But all I'm trying to say is she knows it's not going to work or she's not smart. And either one means she should not sit on city council because either she's being dishonest or she is just not capable of doing the job.
Going back to my point, I just think it's completely irresponsible for a Detroit News with your city name in the masthead of your organization, of your newspaper, to not employ anyone that lives in the city to make endorsements on behalf of the residents. It's insulting.
Yes, it is.
And it should be called out.
And you should call it out.
Right. And I reject anyone that tries to stand in my way.
Yes, but calling that out and attacking individual people are two separate things.
I have never done that.
Okay. All right.
I have literally never done that.
Okay.
I have attacked Gannett.
Okay.
I don't believe that anyone should work for a commercial real estate company pretending to do journalism. I think they should all quit and create their own organization. Huh. It's easier said than done.
Yes,
maybe they should all get laid off.
That's the reason why I'm gonna close this out because we have to go. But I'm gonna close this out by saying this. That's the reason why I'm doing the Black Detroit Democracy series. And step 1 of the series is education. That's going to run through December 17th. And then starting in the new year, we're going to have fellowships. And the goal of our fellowships is to equip people who are interested and passionate about political organizing to go out there and do their own organizing. Yeah. Give you $1,500 to $2,500 for a project grant and also give you a fellowship stipend so that you can be out in the community doing the work because it's not going to be people who have jobs to lose. Right. People who have to worry about mortgages. It's going to be people who feel like they have the freedom to act on their conscience, and that's not going to be organizations. That's going to be young people. You guys make the change.
I want to shout out, before I do, the great journalists that you can read at the Detroit News and Free Press, including Andrea Sahuri, Violet Akanomova. There's this new woman that's at the News covering the city with Lewis. Her name's Ann Stobles. She's really great. Beth LeBlanc has done tremendous reporting on Detroit elections.
I'm going to call up my friend Nancy Caffer because
Nancy
Caffer has been
right?
has encouraged other people to contribute to the journalistic stories of our city, including myself. And she lives in the city of Detroit and is raising a child in the city of Detroit. So we know that this is a person who's part of our community.
Right. Shout out to James Hill, who guides a lot of the coverage in terms of Detroit is. And that was a very community-driven effort to tell the stories of people in neighborhoods.
And one last thing. If we don't have those people in those newsrooms, if we don't have people in those newsrooms are going to hire somebody else.
They will.
And the people they hire may or may not love us at all. And so I do want to acknowledge it's a hard job. Somebody's got to do it. I could never work for corporate America. I tried and it didn't work for me. But for those who do, hats off to you. Do a good job and keep trying your hardest. And we need independent journalists like you, Sam, so that we can hold people accountable, keep them honest, and give them some competition.
We did. It's not, and again, I'm not ever trying to go after anybody. You guys have my number. It is 989-488-0008.
Okay, call them up and let them know.
Let me know, and they won't. They don't want to talk to me. They just want to complain in their little corners because they know that they're mediocre.
Okay, thank you so much for listening to the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms, and of course, support Black independent reporting on Detroit1million.com because good journalism costs. And if you're interested and available, I'm teaching a class Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. at Eastside Community Network at 4401 Connor. The class is free. We provide food. We provide materials for you to learn and continue growing so that you too can be an agent of change. Have a good day.